the News Channel 5 network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris here on a Tuesday, and I hope you'll join in the conversation. We've got a good show on tap for you this morning. We're going to be talking about some of the high-profile legal cases happening here in the Middle Tennessee area. There have been a lot of developments that have happened on several of these cases, some of which may end up being cases we cover gavel to gavel if and when they go to trial. What am I talking about? Okay, more specifically locally, of course, the Daniel Hambrick case, and there were just some new developments yesterday. We can talk about the Waffle House Shooting case with Travis Ranking. We can talk about the Antioch Church Shooting case. Beyond that, a couple of others outside the immediate area here of Nashville. The Clyde Daniels case, as that continues to evolve. And even there's still one last piece of the puzzle to go, the last gavel-to-gavel trial we did, the Holly Bobo case. So there is still one defendant out there waiting to see what happens. We'll get into all of that. We'll open up the phone lines at 737-7587 because today's a great show because it's reuniting the two Nicks. And it's good to have News Channel 5 legal analyst Nick Leonardo on. And Nick, I wanted to say this morning, not only are we doing this live on the Plus where they can call us, but we're also streaming live on Facebook at newschannel5.com. So if you're following us there, message me your questions or comments, and I'll get Nick to answer them for you there. But true, a lot going on, and I think why don't we start with some of them right here in the Nashville area. And yesterday we saw civil lawsuit filed in the Delkey case by the Hambrick family. The criminal case moves forward. I guess a lot of people wonder about this case. You know, an officer-involved shooting, you know, charged with first-degree murder, a lot of controversy around it. Do you think it'll go to trial?
You know, I think when you're charged with first-degree murder, premeditated first-degree murder or something that serious, I mean, that carries the penalty of life in prison. So I'm not sure that it'll be settled. I'm pretty sure that it would go to trial. I can't imagine that that either Mr. Delkey would settle for you know, something.
The Delkey family, or Delkey himself, or the Hambrick family.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Not
so
likely.
I think it's going to go to trial.
A lot of people wonder, okay, the timetable of it. When it did go to the grand jury, they came back really quickly with the indictment. Sometimes that can take some time. How long before a trial? And I ask this because if it goes to trial, that is one we'll be covering gavel to gavel here on the Plus. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think there's going to be quite a few pretrial motions that are filed as the discovery or whatever the state is intending on using comes out and the defense gets to review it. I think that it could maybe be 18 months from now, potentially.
That long.
Or it could potentially be sooner. It just depends on the evidence. But, of course, he is on bond. And so if you're incarcerated awaiting trial, let's say on a multiple offense DUI, you would come first or have the right to come into the courtroom and do your jury trial first before someone on bond. So that's also going to play into whether or not this thing moves forward quickly. But, you know, I do think that the case underscores the power that the prosecutor has in your jurisdiction. We've seen similar cases just here in the past month where there's been an investigation in other states, other jurisdictions, and the DA has decided not to bring charges.
Right. In this case, obviously there's the video, and you know, a lot of people here followed it closely. There's a racial component that comes into play. You have Delkey who's white, you have Hambrick who's black, you have the video, the one running from the other and then squaring up to shoot, and the weapon. And what does this really come down to for you? And when it does go to trial, the argument is going to be whether or not Delkey felt there was mortal danger. Either he felt he was in danger or others were, or that he used excessive force?
Well, you know, obviously it's going to depend on what Mr. Delkey was thinking at the time. Okay, if he felt threatened, right? And they're going to be trying to convey that, and along with his training, to the jury. The other thing I think that's very instrumental in this case is that there is a difference between the use of deadly force with you and I versus a police officer. And so the police officer has, under a 1985 law, can shoot a fleeing felon even if that person is unarmed, if it's to protect themselves or, you know, a third party.
Well, if that's true, then you'd think, what kind of case can the prosecution have? I mean, that seems to give officers an awful lot of leeway.
Well, to some degree it does, but in this case, you know, when you're talking about premeditated first-degree murder, premeditation can be be formed in an instance. Okay, just they don't have to sit at home and think about it for weeks. And of course, in that video, which is very disturbing, you see the officer Delkey. He squares off, and it looks as though maybe he had a moment. But again, we're dealing with someone who, according to the defense, had a firearm in his hand, and so that can turn deadly very quickly. And of course, you've got different video angles and the like, but it's going to come down to, was that a reasonable use of deadly force, and what's the jury going to think based upon the proof they hear?
Do you think they'll seek, if it goes to trial, a jury here locally, or do you think that's something they'll try to get a jury from outside? Will someone ask for that?
That's a great question. There's a lot been going on with that. I mean, obviously, Judge Watkins has sealed the discovery, okay? And so you're not allowed to know. So that will help on the pretrial publicity part of this particular case. But, and they've been discussing that. But again, I think that that's something that they're thinking about and weighing right now. And the question is, where would you go to get a like community, okay? That's up to the judge. You can, have input, but it's not like the defense can say, I want to go to Chattanooga or I want to go to Memphis to pick a jury. I mean, judge is going to hear arguments, consider a lot of factors, and determine where would be a like locale or similar locale from which to pick the jury.
Yeah, to me, I almost see this as a separate case, that wherever you go, the issues at hand here that a jury is going to face are going to be the same, whereas it's different, say, and we'll touch on this case later, the Holly Bobo case, where there's a lot of publicity in this little town and everyone's maybe made up in their mind. In this Daniel Hambrick case, it's not made up. And I think wherever you go, there are going to be jurors who are going to automatically side with law enforcement because they perceive the difficult job that they have, and you ran and all this. And I believe there are going to be jurors who clearly say, you know what, I'm tired of seeing police go too far and getting off this. And I think that's going to happen anywhere. So I think the jury will come from right here, and I think both sides will feel that there are people out there that will see things their way.
Well, they have to,
which means I think we could have a hung jury if this goes to trial.
Well, they have to be very, very careful too, because let's say that they go to Memphis or Knoxville and they've had a whole lot of police shootings lately. Okay, then the media that's surrounding what's been going on in those cities could very well impact the way the jurors view this set of facts, and so you have to be very careful.
I guess you would say it doesn't surprise you, not only in this case, and we should say that yesterday the family of Daniel Hambrick filed a $30 million lawsuit against the city of Nashville and Delkey, okay, and this is a civil case, saying it's going to be in federal court, saying that Delkey, charged with killing him, internalized Metro's, quote, culture of fear, violence, and proactive policing and racism. Pretty strong words there. Civil lawsuit filed there. We also know civil lawsuits have been filed in the Waffle House shooting against Travis Ranking and his family. When civil lawsuits are filed, they're to be expected quite often. Do they typically wait for the criminal case to be resolved before they adjudicate them, or is there an order that comes?
I would say probably 75% of the time that's the case. And in this particular case, because of Judge Watkins' order that it's going to be sealed, I would think that Metro would immediately file something to stay the proceedings until the outcome of the criminal trial. But in that particular case, they are in federal court on a 1983 violation, which 1983 is the name of the code section, and they're trying to say that Mr. Hambrick's civil rights were violated under the color of state law by a state actor, which is a police officer on duty. And then also, if you're in federal court and they have jurisdiction under this 1983 statute, then they also have jurisdiction to adjudicate the ancillary state claims, such as the wrongful death claims and other claims that may have been brought in the actual lawsuit. So, there's a lot of claims that are going to move forward, but I do believe that they will probably put it on hold for a little while because they don't want to impede the criminal process. A lot of times people file a civil lawsuit to get a leg up in the criminal aspect of things, because I might not be able to take your deposition in a criminal case, but if I file a lawsuit, then I would be able to take your deposition and get information and maybe another bite at the apple before I would in a criminal trial. So a lot of times it's a tactical thing, but here I don't think that's the case. Obviously they have claims they are perceiving that are valid, and they will move through that process, but I do believe that there would be a stay, and I think Metro would ask for a stay until the criminal matter is concluded. We have a few questions coming, and we'll take them on air here as well as on Facebook for streaming. Some have brought this up about viewing certain occupations, law enforcement, and another case that's made some headlines, the nursing case. The nurse at Vanderbilt who is being held criminally responsible for a mishap involving medicine being mistakenly given to a patient who ends up dying. And yes, a mistake, but now, the DA is charging her
with a crime, which is unusual. Now, law enforcement officer being charged with the shooting, we've seen it happen, but both these cases, people are saying, well, now, you know, are nurses and police officers under attack? I mean, and the DA obviously looks at the evidence and decides whether, in his mind, a crime has occurred.
Well, you know, the one that the nurse case that Mr. Peter Stryance is her defense attorney. I had a case like that about 5 years ago in an adjacent county here, and the thought was that he was charged with reckless homicide, but the thought was that it was some sort of assisted suicide or some sort of mercy killing. But in that case, we ended up resolving it for an assault, a simple misdemeanor assault. So, you know, the family didn't want to prosecute, and the family didn't want to testify. So in this particular case, you know, you have this alleged victim, this decedent, but is the family mad at the nurse? Does the family want the nurse prosecuted? And of course, you know, it's not something I think the DA's office would look at and take very lightly. So as this goes, there may be some facts that come out, but you know, accidents happen, and a lot of times when an accident occurs, it doesn't mean it's a criminal act. That's
right. That's what caught me by surprise. Accidents happen, but now they're saying it rose. It makes me wonder, and not everything's been made public in that, is there something else in the evidence and the discovery and what they've looked into that once we learn that, we'll say, oh, now we see why they're charging her criminally, as opposed to this was just a horrible mistake. So listen, we'll take a break on that note. Those are just a few of the cases. You know, I've seen some questions here about the Bobo case. A lot of people wondering, what's up with Jason Autry, the last defendant in that? What's going to happen there? And we can also take some questions and comments on the Antioch Church shooting, as well as more on the Waffle House. So we'll take a break, be back. News Channel 5 legal analyst Nick Leonardo is here. He just slides right back in, and we're rolling. We'll take your phone calls and more of your comments as we're streaming live on Facebook right after this.